Lilith by Shinigami Eyes. I know what I am. I know what I've always been since the beginning of my existence. I'm a being of lust and nothing else. This is how I live. This is my purpose. You probably wouldn't know me from the next girl you see, though, aside from one little detail. You're probably just like the rest of them. You'll turn your head and double take. Your eyes will scan over every curve, and if you're like a good number of those who've found themselves alone with me, you might just salivate. Each luscious curve makes your mouth water, and then you just know one thing. You have to have me. I look like the perfect lover, don't I? This is just what I was meant to be, darling. I was meant to be everything you want. That doesn't mean that you are what I want, though. There are all sorts of people in this big world, and I've come to realize I've had a little taste of every kind. Male, female, and even a few that fall under the categories of both or neither. These myths aren't all true. You won't so much die from such intimate contact with me, though, well, not instantly. You will grow ill, be it mentally or physically. As for your soul, that's already mine once you spill forth those empty words to get what you want. I love you, they say. Oh yes, that's what they all say. That's what they tell me just so I give them my love. I suppose these confused little sheep view love and sex as the same thing. It's too cute. Do they really think I feel such an emotion? Of course they think so. They don't know what I am. They fail to realize I don't speak such words in return. I may be a demon, but of all things I am, I'm certainly not a liar. I don't love. I hunger. Words of adoration are scattered about for me to select as I choose. Soon, though, soon, I'll know I'll most likely be left behind in favour for a warmer lover. Most likely one more like themselves. Yes, I cry. I cry in hopes that my lover will feel pity for me, so that I can drain away their health, so I can watch them slowly crumble and deteriorate into something less than human. And even if you do manage to escape my grasp, that one little essential part that you gave up when you told me your silly promises won't come back to you. Yes, go ahead. Adore your spouse. Shower them with all the affections that were once mine. I watch from a distance. I watch you grow old and grey. I watch you grow frail and sickly. I watch as your mind slowly begins to deteriorate and you go tumbling into a state of wild insanity. And I laugh. You're so replaceable, so disposable. Do you think I'd ever tell you my real name? Lilith? I put that one out of use millennium ago. I could be anyone. Amanda, Rebecca, Stephanie, or that sweet girl you know at the cafe. Just know that I, and of course others like me, happen to be everywhere. Oh, and ladies, and particular gentlemen, don't feel so safe. There are males like myself as well, and I'm sure they're just dying to meet you. It truly isn't our fault, though. We're meant to be irresistible, to draw in the weak-willed and to fulfill the desperate fantasies of the mortal. It's so funny, isn't it? It's just too cute that a little piece of arse on the side could cost someone their soul and well-being. Now, you'll just have to excuse me for being nosy, but when was the last time you told someone you loved them? Pale Lunar by Ed. In the last decade and a half, it's become infinitely easier to obtain exactly what you're looking for by way of a couple of keystrokes. The internet has made it all too simple to use a computer to change reality. An abundance of information is merely a search engine away, to the point where it's hard to imagine life as any different. Yet, a generation ago, when the words streaming and torrent were meaningless save for conversations about water, people met face to face to conduct software swap parties, trading games and applications on Sharpie labelled 5 1/4-inch floppies. Of course, most of the time the meets were a way for frugal, community-minded individuals to trade popular games like King's Quest and Maniac Mansion among themselves. However, a few early programming talents designed their own computer games to share among their circles of acquaintances, who in turn would pass it on, until if fun and well-designed enough, an independently developed game had its place in the collection of aficionados across the country. Think of it as the 80s equivalent of a viral video. Pale Lunar, on the other hand, was never circulated outside of the San Francisco Bay Area. All known copies have been long disposed of. All computers that have ever run the game now detritus, buried under layers of filth and polystyrene. This fact is attributed to a number of rather obscure design choices made by its programmer. Pale Lunar was a text adventure in the vein of Zork and the Lurking Horror, at the time when said genre was swiftly going out of fashion. Upon booting the program, the player was presented with a screen almost completely blank, except for the text, "You are in a dark room. Moonlight shines through the window. There is gold in the corner, along with a shovel and a rope. There is a door to the east. Command." So began the game that one writer of a long out-of-print fanzine called an enigmatic, nonsensical and completely unplayable, as the only commands that the game would accept were pick up gold, pick up shovel, pick up rope, open door, and go east. The player was soon presented with the following: reap your reward. Pale Lunar smiles at you. You are in a forest. There are paths to the north, west, and east. Command. What quickly infuriated the few who've played the game was the confusing and buggy nature of the second screen onward. Only one of the directional decisions would be the correct one. For example, on this occasion, a command to go in the direction other than north would lead to the game freezing, requiring the operator to hard reboot the entire computer. Further, any subsequent screens seemed to merely repeat the above text, with the difference being only the directions available. Worse still, the standard text adventure commands appear to be useless. The only accepted non-movement related prompts were use gold, which caused the game to display the message, not here. Use shovel, which brought up, not now. And use rope, which prompted the text, you've already used this. Most who played the game progressed a couple of screens into it before becoming fed up by constantly having to reboot and tossing the disc in disgust, writing off the experience as a shoddily programmed farce. However, there is one thing about the world of computers that remains true. No matter what era, some people who use them have way too much time on their hands. A young man by the name of Michael Nevins decided to see if there was more to Pale Lunar than meets the eye. 5 hours and 33 screens worth of trial and error and unplugged computer cords later, he finally managed to make the game display different text. The text in this new area read, Pale Lunar smiles wide. There are no paths. Pale Lunar smiles wide. The ground is soft. Pale Lunar smiles wide. Here. Command. It was another hour still before Nevin stumbled upon the proper combination of phrases to make the game progress any further.
dig hole, drop gold, then fill hole. This caused the screen to display, "Congratulations! 40.24248 121.4434," upon which the game ceased to accept commands, requiring the user to reboot one last time. After some deliberation, Nevins came to the conclusion that the numbers referred to lines of latitude and longitude. The coordinates led to a point in the sprawling forest that dominated the nearby Lassen Volcanic Park. As he possessed much more free time than sense, Nevins vowed to see Pale Lunar through to its ending. The next day, armed with a map, a compass and a shovel, he navigated the park's trails, noting with amusement how each turn he made corresponded roughly to those he took in-game. Though he initially regretted bringing the compass and digging tool on a mere hunch, the path's similarity all but confirmed his suspicion that the journey would end with him face to face with an eccentric's buried treasure. Out of breath after a tricky struggle to the coordinates, he was pleasantly surprised by a literal stumble upon a patch of uneven dirt. Shoveling as excitedly as he was, it would be an understatement to say that he was taken aback when his heavy strokes unearthed the badly decomposing head of a blonde-haired little girl. Nevins promptly reported the situation to the authorities. The girl was identified as Karen Paulson, 11, reported as missing to the San Diego Police Department a year and a half prior. Efforts were made to track down the programmer of Pale Lunar, but the nearly anonymous legal grey area in which the software swapping community operated inescapably led to many dead ends. Collectors have been known to offer upwards of 6 figures for an authentic copy of the game. The rest of Karen's body was never found. Algol by Anonymous. I have never, not even in the earliest days of my childhood, felt afraid of the dark. Her luring song and visions were nothing but fascination for me. At age 12, already I began to sort those glowing spots hiding in her mantle, learned of Callisto and Andromeda, of Capella and Polaris, and Pluto's secret track across the firmament. The tender dance of Gemini meant more to me than a talk with friends, and for all that time the telescope was closer to me than any relative could have been. All this joy, this affection, lasted until the evening of August 17th, being replaced by something far more incomprehensible. For a long time, I knew not whether I spent this day entranced by the green fairy or in a dreaming fever, since none of the occurrences of this day seemed plausible or explainable to me. As unreal as they may be, as bright they burnt in my skull, and it became impossible for me to turn back without shuddering, to forget the blinking eye that haunted me that night, gazing down serenely between Aglanib and Gorgonia. The true terror of this day began not when dusk set in, but neither morrow nor midday were exactly common, so I regard it as self-evident to recount these incidents. I awoke before dawn, afar from my bed, and pressed flat to the floor. To anyone else this might seem uncommon, but for an amateur of the night sky such as me, it was no curiosity. As many times before when Lunar had revealed her pale face to the world, so had I devoted the nocturnal hours to the study of the stars, until sleep came showering upon me, and I, without chairs or bed in reach, dropped to the floor like a petrified man. That way I rose in the morning, my head buzzing, partly from the fall and partly from my hard resting place. Amazed, I noticed that the small observatory I installed in my garret was bathed in a baleful red light. I pressed my eyelids together, blaming the sight on my headache. Still, when I opened my eyes after a while, even though my sight became clearer, the room was still struck by crimson light beams. Unlike the light of any solar state, The glowing originated in a single spot on the sky, as I could discern, which was far brighter as any of the stars surrounding it, which already faded into the light of the nearing day. Even the cool blue light of the pole star was not capable of outshining the newcomer. Yet before I could observe the universe's red eye with my telescope, sleep overcame me anew, holding me in its grip until noon. I woke up then, not having rested well since a long time. Relieved nearly by the light's disappearance after the break of day, I descended the long staircase leading to the ground floor, leaving the house in coat and hat. Recently my efforts in storing food have grown seldom, and therefore I was forced to have lunch at a restaurant in town to at least satisfy my most urgent feelings of hunger. That was just the way. The night sky required more and more of my attention lately, while common tasks like shopping had to wait. Putting one foot in front of the other, I wandered down the steep street, into the Vale, the city core. The sound of my footsteps on the sandy cobblestone was the only one accompanying me. When alleyways opened up between the crooked old houses, I could feel and hear a draught of wind blowing against me, both chilling and cutting. There was nothing more, no people. The whole town was completely deserted. Where may they have gone? Sure, this town was no more the destination of the masses of migrant workers it had been 50 years ago, but still, around noon, small cafes, huddled together, straying from the market square, should have at least opened their doors, offering seats for smoking old men and local couples with their dislike for strangers, for tile salesmen and travelling merchants, making a stop on their eternal voyage. Where were the children, making their summer more endurable in the cool waters of the market fountain? Shivers crept across my shoulders, colder than wind or water, sneaking deep into my thoughts. Sweat poured from my forehead. Was I really the only person left in town? I walked on. The people must be somewhere around. One foot in front of the other. Loud grew the echo of my footsteps. Faster they danced on the broken stone. Up one alley, down the next. Nobody. Nowhere. Exhausted, I made halt. Took a deep breath. The echo of my footsteps still pursued me. The sound of feet on cobbles still surrounded me. When I turned my head looking back down the lane I had followed, away from the fountain, I saw the city, full of people once more. Growing more and more insecure about the truth of everything I'd seen, I soon after took a seat at one of the local cafes, ordering a sandwich to satisfy my hunger and a cup of mocha to have my spirits stay with me. Over an hour later, my food being long gone and my bills paid, I had the waitress bring me a glass of gin, to escape from this reality that stopped following the laws of nature I'd learned as a child. Was the star I spotted this morning the source of the changes I witnessed? I kept the thought in the back of my head, and half dreaming, I imagined spotting it in the light of day. I left the restaurant with my shadow growing long and ghastly thin in the sinking sun of the afternoon. I knew that the darkness of the night would soon be around me once more, and that this day would no more be than a shadow in the remote corner of my mind. One half of me hoped Selene would tear her brother from the heavens before his time. The other believed that Eos, with her horn of bronze, chase off the old day. But truly, it was blackness which arrived earlier than I would ever have fathomed. The minute hand had barely finished his round, following my desperate prayer to forgotten gods, when the sun escaped behind the gatehouse, waiting beneath the horizon for her timely wake. It was then that the bright disk of the full moon appeared amidst black cloud trees, freeing me from the spell of hours past. Here, below the stars, I felt safe, ready to flee the full and empty city and her dusty streets, ready to draw out the secrets of the universe in the isolation of my private quarters. Little did I know that this was not the time of sweet Selene, but of Hecate nearing. Town had nothing left for me. She had never been much more than a pure necessity, a place to pick up food and supplies. Had I enough money to employ someone for such business, these streets would never felt my tread again. As this was not the case, these human urges kept calling me away from the quiet and safety of my own home. How happy was I to be once more within its walls. I continued my ascent, away from the crowds, and, as it seems, the crowds were moving away from me as well. Such provenance could only be satisfying, yet the fact that nobody at all walked the same direction as I was disturbing at first. I did not try to make more sense of the occurrence, not even as I had closed the door behind me and had reached the garret via the attic ladder. My curiosity was now once more claimed by the radiant images of the night sky, and to one of them especially was my attention drawn, the fiery eye that in the morning had greeted me. Smiling, I put it into focus, in joyous expectation, even though my telescope could recognize what I had not perceived before. The red lantern, who presented me with such deep sleep, was carried by the hand of Perseus, and blinked at me from the Gorgon's head. First it appeared weaker to me than at the morning dawn, as a drawing only of my observation. I knew not whether to be disappointed or relieved at this insight. Perhaps it was my naked eye alone that painted bright Medusa's heavenly one. This thought I grasped, moving back from the ocular. With no success. The heaven was as beautiful as before, yet the glow returned not. I cursed my fate then, noting how much I missed Medusa's gaze, that brought desolation only in the days of yore. 1 hour I wept over my loss, the next I thanked the more graceful gods, in alternation, then, until sleep got a hold of me once more, as I rolled into a ball on the floor before the telescope. Morpheus's gift was not long granted to me, but I was laughing across my whole face when I rose from the arms of slumber. She has returned, my crimson blinking patron saint, and baptized me in her light. I had to be closer to her, that I became aware of. From the room I fled towards the ladder, reaching out to the roof, knowing that looking through the long glass would only leave me unsatisfied again. For one single motion I threw open the ledge, climbed up to the rooftop, and smiled back at her from my new position. For only a moment I looked around me, and in the stars' light I saw the crowd once more, that evaded me in my homecoming. In the red glance they were lined up for some procession. They were waiting for me. One last time to the heavens went my gaze, and, like a silent confirmation, I received her wink. Nothing held me anymore. Down all the stairs my path led me, and I needed not coat nor hat nor shoes to bask in her favour. Before the door I stepped, and people received me for the first time with wide, blessing smiles. I embraced their foremost man, who, as the group's leader, had declared me, and in the Gorgon's light we traced down the streets, 1,000 feet on sand-strewn plaster in endless rows, just towards her. The forgotten lanterns of the town we left behind, out to the hills our way went, where her light seemed all the brighter. The goddess gave me there her red signs, but whence it came I asked her not. In joy I passed it on to the next man, who for a long time knew me but as a strange hermit. Now they all followed to the hills of Torium's top, where crooked ruins seamed our ways, the relics of bygone places of worship. On our journey, the stars' red colour grew but brighter, and we all threw off our old lives, our old clothes. We needed no more their protection. Half crawling, half limping on broken soles, half joyously jumping, we climbed the rocky soil, stood amidst the ancient wrecked temple in her in transcendence, where I heard the words, "Come to me." And truly, that was our intention. In the middle of the woodland shade, the highest bliss overcame us, and we went on with the frenzied rite until all the heavens were lit in red candles. We were freed by her work, by the blinking from the demon's head, and when deep in the dome of stars the portal opened, through which we left our old world behind and entered the red world. I thought back one last time to this one day's morrow and what it promised me. I know now my sight in the city was a vision, a sweet image of the future, brought by my goddess, to whose womb we lay now in content doze. A birth of a new generation was upon us, here in the darkness of our last dark night, here in the brightness of our red ardent future. She whispered to me of the days to come. I would walk among them once more, and sow fires in the cities. The people would follow me again to the hilltop and pray with their whole bodies between trees and broken stone. The people would follow her until all the cities were vacant, and just the cold wind would remain. I saw salvation from the stars, and with this blessing, I awoke. In an unknown room, an unknown town, but pressed to the floor with spiraling head. No rarity for a lover of the night sky. I nearly asked myself if it had all been no more than a dream, a fever brought on by the green fairy. But what was green against the red of my goddess? No one had to be afraid anymore in the darkness of the night. And when I left at midday to satisfy her hunger, so hoped I to make the future present. I would empty out the cities. I would sow fire amidst the people. For her tender kiss upon my forehead, her security and warmth, for her calling, for her love, for the blinking of my red star. The Pickup by Barnabas Deimos. You came into that corner store looking for something to take your mind off your life. When you came though, you knew full well what you were looking for. Me. You knew I was there, that I would always be there. It's just how it works out. And so many others have tried to pick me up from there. People full of bravado or full of the belief that they are special. But in reality, they're full of shit. I'm there just for a specific type of person. Your type. You came in with bewildered eyes, perusing the shop, but your gaze landed squarely on my back. You stared longing at me for quite some time, didn't you? I could tell. That my back was to you. I could tell. And you walked towards me, confidently, with the words, "I want you," on your lips. And who was I to fight that? You bought yourself some random items to pretend you were not just there to find something dark, handsome, and inviting. And you could just not wait to bring me home, could you? We plopped together on the couch, snuggled up close under a blanket. Ah, romance. Such a fun game prior to the true events. You flipped on the television, pretending you would only give me a partial bit of your attention, as if you could play hard to get with me. You've dragged your fingers across my sides absent-mindedly as you watch some inane sitcom. But I could tell by your touch that you wanted what I had to offer you. And so you did. You removed my jacket forcibly with your hands, such tedious, unnecessary things covering me, if you ask me. For in truth, I would prefer to be left bare to you. And soon we were face to face, buried in each other, you staring into me and me staring into you. You explored the first layer of me. I wanted so much for you to go deeper as quickly as possible, but alas, all good things to those who wait. And then what's this? You lifted me up and dragged me to the bedroom. Quick as a flash, you disrobed and found yourself jumping into bed with me. So quick So to the point. Yes, let's get to the gritty of it. Again open before you, you traced your nails up and down my spine as you grew more and more interested in what I was offering you. We rolled together, as it's always so hard to find a good comfortable position where you are entertaining someone in bed. You find that right spot for the two of us, and I begin to truly work my magic on you. I give you bit by increasing bit, making your heartbeat race, your breath quicken, and filling your mind with fireworks. You bite your lower lip as you anticipate the excitement, what's to happen next. It's always so much fun when I let people on before the reality of the situation begins. I reach out and grab you, the tools that I was given at birth that have been providing you such wonderful feelings. Begin to feel amiss. Something is wrong. But it's too late now, isn't it? I have you hooked and wrapped in my gaze and in my power. And oh, such wonderful visions to be had, where I am king, where I was created, where I was brought into life just for this purpose, to bring you here, to show you this place. The darkness of the age-old human feeling, the strongest emotions, the terrible things that once and still do lurk beneath your bed and outside your window, the grotesque mistakes of the natural form and the obscene recreation by man's own hands, the claws of the alien beings beyond this world and this reality, the monstrous contortions of the things that are of this world but long forgotten, terrible visages of wretched flesh and sanguine displays of artistry, where meat and clay become one, where the mind is more than just some abstract thing, and where you, my little pet, are nothing more than my irredeemable slave. You cannot look away from these things I'm filling your head with, can you? You keep your arms wrapped around me. You cannot look away from my gaze as it tears through your psyche and plants my terrible seeds for you to cultivate. And as quickly as it came, it comes to a thundering, gut-wrenching, sickening, squelching end. You find yourself shivering as you realize it's over. You gasp for air and hold me close to your body. Exhausted, you fall into a deep slumber where the seeds I had lain begin to grow. Tendrils reaching through your brain, showing you everything you just witnessed. But the beauty of it is that your mind retools it, reworks it, and makes it worse. Soon you are crushed and suffocated by the immense weight of the horrific things swelling in your mind like a cancerous tumor. You look at me in your arms, and you know full well I can do it again, and again, and again. And that deep down inside, you want me to. Of course you want me to. After all, that's why you were looking for me when you walked into that bookshop on the corner and walked purposefully to the horror section and pulled me off the shelf. The Patron Saint of the Good-Looking Corpse by the Silicon Lemming. Come in, friend. Take a seat. My name? Call me Jack. I run this establishment. I've been working this bar for the better part of 100 years. Got a nice stage. We've got entertainment later if you're sticking around. Well, do you have time for a drink? Okay. What was that? The 100 years thing? Yeah, friend. I'm a little older than I look. I'm a demon. I can tell from your expression that you've never bumped into one of us before. We do exist. I guarantee that by the end of this conversation, I'll have swung your opinion. Don't worry, I'm not a threat. Hardly good for business. And my business is important to me. On that stage, you'll see some of the best talent in the biz. I consider myself a talent scout without equal. I specialize in contracts for fame and fortune. I can give the lucky individual 10 years of their dreams, and then I come to collect. In return, they play at my club for the rest of eternity. They almost never think twice. One catch though. I can only make this deal with them whilst they're 17. I don't know why, I don't make the rules. Who do I have? You probably know a few of them. The first guy I signed was something really special. Created an entire genre by himself. Kid by the name of Robert. A real demon on the guitar. If you'll pardon the pun. It seems everyone and his brother knew about our deal though. Yeah, the crossroads thing. Well, it did make the subject easier when I was talking to later pitchers. The thing with Robert is, he wasn't ready to give it up when I came to collect. So I had to grease the wheels, so to speak. Strychnine poisoning can be incredibly painful, or so I hear. This is the thing, they're happy for the trade at 17, but the moment they hit 27, it starts to consume them. It becomes all they can think about. Some will use it to drive them to write as much as they can. Others will try to use as many distractions as possible to not think about it. You know, drugs, alcohol, women, the good things in life. Oh, need a refill there, chap? This one guy, Kurt, now he surprised me. He worked out how to summon me, against my will, I might add. Yanked me right into his goddamn front room. Just as I'm about to give the shaggy-haired fool a piece of my mind, he pulls out a shotgun and says that he's breaking the deal. Blew his brains out right in front of me. I mean, come on. The deals are binding. Killing yourself just gets you here faster. I'm a freaking demon. My kind invented fine print. Another cat I should mention is Jimmy. He was a rare one, I tell you. The kid was tripping so hard when he got here, it took us a week to convince him he was dead. All he cared about was as long as he had a guitar to play. Now he plays every Friday night. Packs the place out every time. What? Oh, come on. I've worked hard for them, and now they work hard for me. This bar is something I take pride in. I have some of the best entertainment in the world, and here I showcase it to any who know how to get here. You don't remember how you got here? Yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Something tells me you've got a little more free time than you realize. Fancy another drink? A Mile Above Hell by Dollarhide. The first thing I always remember is the heat. Even when I could see nothing, hear nothing. Even when my brain was trying to bury itself in the comfy, dark recesses of unconsciousness, my body was slowly being cooked sunny side down. I couldn't open my eyes, but I didn't want to anyway. I was tired. I had been unconscious. The heat was tolerable when I was asleep, and I really wanted to go back to sleep. Like a tired kid burying his head into the pillow, moaning, "I don't want to go to school." My body, however, was slowly waking up on its own. I began to grow conscious of other stimuli. The lightweight cotton green uniform, the heavy combat boots, the open-ended gloves that protected my palms but left my fingers to saute on the melted asphalt. Something was missing though. Finally, I slowly opened my eyes, and the light and heat quickly slammed the doors again. I tried again after several minutes, but slower this time.
and this time it was bearable. I was laying on something hot. A stretch of rough, black surface turned into a warped, bubbly skillet by heat. Some of it stuck to the black, pocketed vest that covered my torso, to the knee pads and the toes of my boots. As my vision cleared further, I noticed more and more of the area beyond the blacked road. Dust swirled about me in dust devils. The heat was not just coming from the ground. The wind was like a dragon's breath, and it smelled of something burning, a bit of everything burning. Then came the pain. I say the pain because there was no area of it. I felt as if I'd been run over by a steamroller from head to foot. My hands were charred from lying on the ground. My body was a little better off, protected from direct heat by a couple layers of cotton and tactical vest pockets. But my skin was drenched with sweat. The inside of my clothes was a swamp. And my head... Oh, Jesus Christ, my head. The only way to describe it is to imagine your head being put in a maraca with 10 pounds of buckshot lead and going to Mexican New Year celebrations. It was terrible. I wasn't even moving yet. There seemed to be a big blackness on the right side of my vision. It came to me that I had only been seeing out of my left eye. The right side had not opened, or it wasn't there. I realized now that little could be done lying on my face like a dead turtle, so I decided to attempt rolling onto my back and getting a somewhat better look about me. I already knew this was going to hurt. Some of the melted asphalt had cooled with my face touching it. It would be like ripping off duct tape, only a lot worse. I prepared for blood, knowing that the oily tar would not come off on its own, and I could not lie here on my face all day. At first my arms didn't seem to work, just laying there like dry docked eels. Then as they got more blood in them, the pain flowed in. They felt like they had been stretched, balled up, jackhammered, then mixed with water and spread out alongside the asphalt. However, my arms were rather muscular and recovered quickly. Planting my hands against the ground, my elbows reaching above my spine like a spider's legs, I braced for the pain and pushed, arching my spine. At first my face resisted parting with the ground, and the pulling my skin caused sharp discomfort. This was bliss compared with what happened next. Setting my neck and jaw, I yanked my head backwards and pushed up. There was a most nasty peeling noise, like the pulling apart of 2 pieces of meat, which is not too far off. A tear or two and warm red blood began to spurt onto the smoking tar. My face seized up from the utter agony of several layers of my skin being yanked off. It made me glad I hadn't grown a beard or long hair. I might have lost my whole face. At least I was able to move, but the pain was making my vision flutter. Stabilizing myself, I rocked myself backwards so I was kneeling upright. Now the steady tide of blood streaked down my neck and soaked into my thick, green, spattered coat. I knew now that before I could look around, I needed to find something to cover the wound. Something was falling out of the sky into my hair, building up on my shoulders in gear. It looked like dirty snow. Whatever it was, I needed to clean and dress my disfigured cheek immediately. I looked around me for some spare cloth, a medikit, or a backpack. I had a large backpack on my shoulders. It matched my forest pattern uniform, probably my helmet too, wherever that thing was. It was held across my chest by several buckles to keep it on my back, so I proceeded to undo them. I then noticed a name tag on the left shoulder strap. Specialist 4, Austin Carver. It wasn't a name I recognized.
My fingers were so blistered and sore it was slow and hellish undoing the 3 clasps, but click by click I was able to shrug the gear off. It fell with a thud into the dust, and I felt lighter. The strain on my back lessened. A couple more clamps and it lay open like a little cave. It was chock full of gear. Pouches on the outside held a canteen filled with lukewarm water, a couple tube-like grenades, more ammunition for my rifle, which also seemed to be missing like most of my hardware, and a radio. But the materials inside were enough for 3 men, and it was all mine. I quickly found ample medical supplies in a small red box. More pain was to come. I would have to dab some disinfectant onto my cheek before I patched it up. I stared at the dreaded brown bottle of hydrogen peroxide before gritting my teeth, biting down on a piece of gauze before applying some to a cloth. I poised it over my cheek, bit the bullet, and pressed it to my face. Some pain is so bad it makes you lose control of some other parts of your body. I felt my fingers numb a bit and shake like an electrical current was going through them, but my jaw dropped into a soundless scream as my face squeezed tight. Through it all, the offending cloth stayed over the wound. Finally, satisfied that the disinfectant had done its work, I threw the blood-stained item as far away from me as possible, gasping for breath, and grabbed a clean gauze, folded it into a wad, and taped it onto the wound. Before sweat and blood could remove the adhesive, I wrapped a bandage around my head, encompassing my mouth, ears, and the back of my head. I could only imagine it looked like a makeshift balaclava for someone in a mental institution, especially when I had to cut a hole for my mouth to breathe through. Then I remembered my right eye. When applying the bandage, I felt a scaly surface over the right side of my head, along with an acute pain. Feeling it again, I rubbed it with my finger, and it came off dusted with something like rust. Dried blood. Somehow my head had been injured, and blood had poured over my eye and hardened like a seal of wax. Taking a little more cloth, I dampened it with water and rubbed at my eye. It came away red, but soon my right eye was opened. Then I turned my attention to the aforementioned head wound. Gingerly, my hand crept up my skull to the nexus of pain jolts. Suddenly, I found the problem. It was as if my hand were a car and it had suddenly driven off a cliff. A massive tent, more like a bomb crater, shaped like a spearhead running about 4 inches along the dome of my head. It was no wonder I wasn't remembering much. There was serious damage up there. My stomach rumbled almost audibly, and it felt shrunken. I patted my belly and noticed there were some ribs showing. Before I shouldered my pack again, I found some containers near the bottom of the bag, reading Case 4 MRE. Were I in a more comfortable situation, I'm sure the rations inside would have been left where they were, but as I was, I inhaled the food quicker than you would think possible. More of the dirty snow was falling as I shouldered my gear again, pushing my curiosity more. I needed to examine the environment beyond where I was. At the moment, I slowly pieced together my surroundings. I seemed to be in a large hole, a foxhole perhaps, but there was asphalt at the bottom. My thought was that maybe an earthquake had caused this part of the road to fall several feet into a fault. The sides were a steep mix of gravel, sand, and several huge fragments of metal beams. I could climb out, but it would be on all fours. Now that all my immediate issues had been cared for, it hit me like a thunderbolt. So sudden and profound that I nearly rocked back on my heels. Who am I? I hadn't recognized the name tag. Was it my own name? How did I get here? What's been happening? 1,000 questions swarmed through my head so fast my knees buckled, and I ended up back where I had started 10 minutes ago. Suddenly, The slopes of the crater I was in became like walls. They began to close in. A deep-seated panic set in and my heart began to race. Blood oozed through my cheek and down my forehead as I clawed into the sand, hiding me from the rest of the world. I dug in my toes and climbed furiously up the slope. Then, like a drowning man breaking the surface of the water, I emerged from the hole, gasping for air. I lay prone on the lip of the crater for a minute, my stress-induced claustrophobia bleeding away with all my head wounds. My hand gripped the scorched sand like a lifeline. My head slowly came up again. I felt serious déjà vu from an hour ago when I had woken in the crater. Mostly because I, again, was lying on my face, feeling like death. And, looking up, the area I had now discovered was not so much different from the smoking hole from which I had emerged. It was larger, more open, and set on a softly sloped hillside leading to a peak. A road ran the length of it, disappearing over the top. Many structures lined both sides of the road, a lot of them on fire, some of them unrecognizable due to splintered wood, crushed plaster, and scattered tiles. Everything had been sprawled in one direction, like a huge sledgehammer had hit the block and sent everything flying. What an ungodly mess. Some cars were lying on their backs like dead spiders, some twisted or smelted into shapeless masses of steel and rubber. License plates had melted and cooled into shiny green stained icicles on the rear ends of the now dead machines. I tried to crawl forward, but a tinkling noise and a sharp pain in my fingertips forced me to stop again. Shattered glass carpeted the ground in every direction. You could spit and not miss a shard. Now blood oozed from my fingers, and I was forced to dig into the bag again, fresh warm blood smearing the green material. Soon my hands matched my rather grotesque head bandage. I must have looked quite a sight. My charred green uniform, all my gear, and then these blaring white bandages smeared with red stains, turning a deep rusty brown. I stood up this time, very shakily, to save my fingers more damage, and to let my tough boots deal with the glass. Now my head was brushing against a layer of smoke that was flowing parallel to the spread of wreckage that encompassed me. I became conscious of the smell again, only now it was much stronger. A witch's cauldron of pongs. I could not find one word for it. The clouds split for a moment, and the light poured into the smouldering landscape. Something shone into my dazed right eye, which was still adjusting, and I raised my bandaged hands to ease the flash. The sun was reflecting off a large piece of shiny metal, flat, protected from damage by a pile of rubble. It caught my attention firmly, and I felt the irrepressible need to investigate it, to touch it. I stumbled across the street, not bothering to look both ways. It hardly seemed the time to worry about the old common courtesies of times that seemed to have changed dramatically. I stood over the pile of concrete crumbles and jagged miniature palisades of steel rebar, carefully putting one foot in front of the other in my little quest. While I shambled gently like a colt taking its first steps, my eyes took in thousands of images from the endless stimuli of this foreign-seeming landscape. The cars all looked like corpses. Some of them were burnt to charcoal. Once charming houses, making up a suburb, were now piles of splinters and glass shards, like the cremated remains of the dead tossed to the wind. I finally reached the pile of wreckage, underneath which the piece of metal shone like a beacon. I now saw it lay beneath a gutted couch, with bits of stuffing catching in the wind like cottonwood seeds. I even saw some broken picture frames, empty, shattered reminders of a healthy, safe world long ago, bulldozed by an unforeseen event. The metal was now within my reach. and I grabbed it with both hands, pulling with my back, legs and shoulders. Even with the gloves protecting my palms, I could feel the heat of the metal on my exposed fingers, like a cookie sheet taken out of the oven. A screeching of concrete scraping steel, and I felt it slowly releasing, bit by bit, for it was huge, about the size of a plane's wing. It was bent in the shape of a dinner plate by the rubble that imprisoned it. It was battered into a surprisingly fetching mix of silver scrapes and turquoise splashes. I can now see what it was. One of those signs in a city that directs you somewhere. It was upside down, and a lot of the lettering had been battered away, so I couldn't read it yet. Oh, how I wanted to read it. Now I could feel the pain in my muscles, my shoulders especially. It just seemed to keep feeding itself out like a scroll. Finally, after having dragged nearly 10 feet of metal from the rubble, it gave. I fell backwards onto the fiercely hot ground, the huge sign clattering at my feet. I got up shakily, stretching the tensility from my aching muscles. I could feel my face bleed again from my elevated heart rate, and I knew I'd lost a dangerous amount of blood. I would probably find a trail of it like breadcrumbs going back to the pit where I'd woken up. I fumbled into my backpack for my canteen of warm water as I stood the sign on its side so I could read it. I twisted the cap off, some blood streaking on the edges, making it a bit slippery. I tilted it to my mouth to drink, until I saw what was on the sign. From little I could read behind the damage, it read, "Welcome to Denver. Population 554,363. Elevation 5,280 feet." It brought back a ton of memories I didn't think I had. As I looked around, I saw flashes of bustling streets, busy sidewalks, windows with faces looking out, and thousands, tens of thousands of people. All of that. The skyscrapers, the bridges, and over 500,000 souls. All gone in a flash, because of some unknown catastrophe. The hot wind suddenly kicked up with a heavy gust, and the sign fell onto its front, showing the backside. I saw writing from another author. It was in spray paint, hastily scrawled, with the most atrocious grammar I've ever seen. "Welcome to the wasteland. Population all dead. Elevation 1 mile above hell." The canteen sat on my lips, frozen in place, and my mouth was now very dry. In the reflection of the steel sign, I saw something enormous behind me. I turned around slowly, not out of pain or aching, but out of sheer awe and terror. There, on the middle of the horizon, towered a rising ball of fire and smoke, looming like a lumbering giant of destruction. It grew and grew, mushrooming into the sky, and clouds of ash blocked out the sun. The area where I'd awakened had fared relatively well. Some buildings were still intact, sheltered from the thermonuclear blast by sturdy buildings which shook the full force of the missile strike. I looked out into the skyline, the city centre about 4 miles east of my position, and saw nothing but a huge sinkhole of buildings, machines and bodies, all molten into a vile-smelling mix. I shook my head, my jaw slack in wonder. How had I alone survived? This was a 10-second massacre. Who knows how many innocent people would turn to ash before they had even a chance to scream for some god to save them? Then my heart jumped higher than it was made to do, and I ran for cover. Before I knew what I was doing, I was hiding behind a massive chunk of concrete from a parking garage. I had heard someone moving out there. It was human. Nothing else walks with slow-sounding footsteps, or is heavy enough to dislodge rubble. It grew closer and closer. I could hear a guttural grunting from a damaged or dry throat. It had to be a survivor. I cleared my throat quietly and called out in a timid voice. "Hello? Is someone out there?" The footsteps immediately stopped. The world had become silent again. But there was a new smell and stench. It smelled like burning meat, like bad food. It was a scent that made any sensible human nervous. It was the stench of death, and it was here. I shook off my anxiety and strode out into the street again. I looked around, seeing no one, but there was too much cover for them to hide in. I planted my feet and called out again, stronger this time. "Is someone out there? Are there any survivors?" There it was again, the grunting. But it had taken on a new tone, less a benign grunting like a pig slopping around. Now it sounded more like a dog, giving out the quiet order to move in. I suddenly became aware of multiple sources. Now unseen assailants were responding to the call of the first like a wolf pack. I could sense the approach of many more footsteps, the sound of gravel dislodged underfoot. It was all around me. I began to panic and looked around for a weapon. I could now see shell casings lying everywhere, evidence of a huge but futile struggle against an enemy I'd yet to face. There, leaning on the open door of a burnt-out husk of a car, was an M4A1 assault rifle. It had all the attachments and specs of the rifle sent to the United States Army, but I would have taken it if it were an age-old musket, if it meant I had something to defend myself with. I rushed for it. As the sounds were so near, I swear I could have touched them. I reached the car and grabbed the gun, ready to level it on the attackers. I couldn't move the gun very far. There was a charred, bony hand reaching out of the car like a creepy decoration, clutching the barrel with an iron death grip. I yanked and pulled until a sickening, dry, tearing noise, like the uprooting of a sapling, the arm gave way, leaving the hand still attached to the barrel. I grabbed it and broke it off, the brittle fingers snapping like twigs, and I pulled back the slide, cocking the weapon. I whirled around, ready to fight back, only to find myself dumbfounded again. There were 5 of them, all in plain sight now. They, at first glance, looked like humans, standing upright, 2 arms and legs, and a head above their shoulders. But as I stared at them with horror, I saw they were not human, not anymore. All of them were charred like burnt steaks. Some of them steamed as their flesh boiled. One of them looked like a burnt puppet, all carbon black, moving with creaking joints. All of them were torn apart. There was a woman figure. Most of her clothes were burnt off, and her entire front, chest, stomach and throat were torn to shreds as if by the teeth of a wild animal. A man crawled on the ground, both legs gone, dragging itself on a trail of its own blood and trailing guts. The others, a mix of women and men, looked more intact, but all bore signs of horrific wounds. All had flesh missing. One had the side of her neck gaping open, oozing a black gel of some kind. And worst of all, they all had strings of meat, fat and tendons stuck between their teeth, and drips of blood coming from their mouths. And in spite of their horrific mutilations, they were all moving towards me. Their eyes were blank. Those that still had eyes, they had turned a milky white, unseeing, dead eyes. The gun trembled in my hand, and I found I could not aim at the pitiful sights. I screamed in horror at the creatures shambling towards me. Jesus H. Christ, what is happening? What the hell happened? My words seemed to stir them up, and with louder growls they all raised their arms towards me with the intent of grabbing me. I could only sicken myself imagining what they would do to me. I steeled my nerves and took aim with the rifle. My finger acted of its own accord, and gunfire ripped the silence. I saw little spurts of black ooze burst from impact wounds on their chests, legs, and stomach. The weapon roared like a cornered lion, and I jammed the trigger as hard as I could. A hail of bullets tore into the abominations. I saw one take a hit right in the heart and go flailing onto its back. As I started to shoot another, out of the corner of my vision I saw him getting right back up as if I hadn't shot him at all. I was panicking and fighting for my life, slowly retreating backwards down the leveled street. The gun finally clicked empty, and still all 5 were following me, and now several more had emerged from alleyways and from undercars to join the assault. It was a pack, slowly growing into a horde. I quickly switched the dry magazine for a fresh one from my vest, and began firing again. This time I was firing semi-auto, careful not to miss or waste ammo. I knew I was hitting them. I knew I was supposed to be wasting them, yet they shrugged off everything I gave them. They were unstoppable, and now 2 more had arrived. I was faced with a wall of creatures, and I was running out of room, backing into a cul-de-sac with nowhere to run. Another mag empty. I was down to 2 full ones. I was desperate, and I decided on a different measure. I had to take out the heads. It's a difficult shot, and my training revolved around aiming for the widest, biggest target on the human body, the chest. But there was no other way. Reloading the rifle, looking up to see more than 20 assorted attackers, I dropped to one knee to steady my aim. I placed the red dot between the white, moon-like eyes of the closest attacker. It was the torn woman, and she looked right back at me down the sight. Why weren't these things afraid of dying? Maybe they couldn't feel fear. They weren't human anymore. I chanted this to myself as I fired, watching as the bullet flew right into the face of the woman. I saw a tiny blue hole appear in her forehead, and black, grey and bluish matter blast out the back of her skull. She collapsed, not even twitching. She fell flat onto her back. Her fellow attackers took no notice, stepping over her as they continued to shamble in my direction. That's all it took. My dander was up, and I felt my nerves turn to steel, and I placed the next target. It was easier this time. By now I had convinced myself these things were monsters and I needed to kill them. They needed to die. They had to die. One by one I popped their heads like water balloons, watching them fall back onto their own mess of bone and brains. The time blurred. I was winning, and I knew it. Finally I dropped the 20th and last target. I didn't even flinch when I saw it crumble to the ground, its head blown clean of its brain. I was in hunter mode. I was no longer the hunted. 20 shots, 20 kills. I felt the adrenaline surging through my once lethargic body. I was so focused on my blood-pumping victory, I did not hear something behind me. It must have crawled from under the wrecked Chevy that lay on its back behind me. I first heard it when it began to drag itself across a patch of shattered glass. Before I could turn around, I felt a grip of iron clasp around my ankle. Its legs were shattered tatters of cloth and tendons trailing behind it, and the arms were atrophied, but it was like a strongman's arm, and my legs were thrown out from beneath me. My knuckles banged against the blacktop, and my rifle went clattering to the ground beyond my reach. My head also hit the ground, and everything fogged up for a moment. I was brought back by high pressure to my toe. It felt like something was squeezing my boot with a vice. I brought my head up and looked at the afflicted foot. The crawler was still there, trying furiously to bite through the reinforced material of my left combat boot, like a dog chewing at a rubber ball, and it growled angrily. The material resisted its broken teeth. I jolted back into action and tried to free my boot, but this creature had a grip like steel. I brought up my free foot, the right-hand one, and pumped the heel into the thing's face. I felt a satisfying crunch as I connected with the jaw, dislocating it completely, rendering the teeth useless. I then swung back my right leg and soccer kicked my attacker full in the head. I heard a sound like breaking a thick carrot in half, and its head snapped to a certainly unnatural angle. It twitched its hands for a moment, and then went limp. Its hands relaxed their grip, and I kicked my left foot free again. Once I was on my feet, I cast my eye around for my weapon. It had gone about 10 feet from me, and I ran to grab it. Before I could get it, something wrapped itself around my waist in a tackle, and I was on the ground again. I felt fists pound my face, jolting my head back and forth. It was small, a teenager, I think, and I weighed so little it was a wonder it had knocked me down at all. I returned the blow, feeling it slam into a thin cheek, and my attacker leapt away, cursing in some language I didn't understand. This got my attention. Those things I had just fought and killed, they didn't talk. They certainly didn't back down. I looked up and saw my assailant in full light. Goodness, I thought. Can't have been more than 16 years old. She, for in fact it was a girl, wore a torn hoodie and fingerless gloves and slim jeans, along with muddied Converse shoes. She now had sat down against a wall, crying her eyes out, murmuring in what, years later, I could tell was Spanish. I immediately felt terrible, although I wasn't sure why. I edged my way towards her, slowly offering my hand in peace. She wouldn't look up at me. She was still bawling like a little child. I gained the courage to lay my hand on her shoulder, and to my surprise she didn't fight me. I kneeled down. She lifted her tear-soaked face. She was easily young enough to be my daughter. She looked me right in the eye, and I again felt miserable when I saw the growing bruise on her left cheek. "Hey, I'm sorry about that," I said sheepishly. She brushed her black hair out of her eyes, back into her hood, and sniffled. "It's okay." I was shocked by this. I had heard her curse me in clear Spanish, and now she spoke forgivingly in English. However, I didn't mind the change. I knew no Spanish at the time. "Why'd you attack me?" She lowered her eyes at this, as if embarrassed. "I heard gunfire. I thought perhaps some soldiers were here. I ran away, hoping to get rescued, and I saw you. Your face, it spooked me. All those bandages and all that blood. I panicked and blindly attacked. I'm very sorry." I nodded, touching a new tender spot on my previously undamaged left cheek. "I don't imagine you'll be the last." I tried a weak smile, but the torn side of my face didn't like it. I pulled her to her feet, and having grabbed the rifle, I began walking. She followed me, staying behind me like one would being behind a parent. I began to feel nervous. We were out of the cul-de-sac, and she hadn't said a word. So, clearing my throat, I tried to strike conversation. "What's your name?" "Ruby." It was a nice name, and I nodded. But she didn't say anything more beyond the clipped answer, so I continued. "How are you still alive?" "I was hiding in a subway tunnel from the firebomb, and waited till the flames died down. I stayed far away from the area of the missile strike. I didn't want to get sick from radiation poisoning." "You seem to know a lot about all this." She nodded nervously and wiped her face on her sleeve. "Yeah, my dad, he's a soldier in the US Army, and we all lived here. He had a nice house just down the hill." Ruby pointed down the road to our left, towards where I'd woken up. From there I could see a blazing crater and many smouldering wrecks of houses. I turned my eye away when I saw 3 burning corpses lying in the street. They looked like dead beetles. "And then it all hit the fan," she finished, putting her hands in her pockets. I looked around and agreed that it certainly had. We'd been walking for about 5 minutes when I finally asked her the biggest question on my mind. So, what the hell happened here? She looked at me in shock. What? How could you not know? The military's been on the front lines of this whole thing since it happened. I reached up, tapping my bandaged skull with the rifle barrel. She looked confused, then seemed to have put two and two together. Are you one of those guys? I thought it only happened in movies. I grinned. Nope. Must have took one big hit to the noggin. Yet you know how to use that? She gestured to the rifle slung across my chest. And how to talk? I shrugged at this. Don't know about the talking thing. Maybe that's built in no matter what. And the gun, it's all been instinctual. Plus I think I'm remembering stuff again. She nodded. That's good. After another 5 minutes, the girl pointed to a large green vehicle parked carelessly in the middle of the road. It was untouched by the firebombing, as was most of this area. She ran up to it, smiled and patted the armoured skin like one does to a horse. It was bigger than a car. I saw a big, mean-looking gun on top, and the front hood and windshield was spattered with blood. I swear I saw some fingers stuck in the grille. Without taking the time to look, I yanked open the door. I was bombarded by the fierce smell that one gets when they return from vacation to find their rotted fruit in the fridge, and I recoiled, covering my mouth and shutting my eyes. Over the intense droning of flies, I could barely hear a frenzied growl. I couldn't open my eyes, but I felt two bony hands, creaky and putrid, lock onto my shoulders, and I felt someone pushing me onto my back. I heard Ruby scream as we tumbled. It was on me. I smelt the vile breath, and I knew that if I opened my eyes, I'd be greeted by something very unpleasant. So I wrestled blindly, pushing with all my might. But his hands were like handcuffs, in spite of being half claimed by rotten maggots. How are these things so strong? I dropped my gun so I could use both hands. I gave up pushing it away, and now got it around the throat, trying to break its atrophied neck. I heard it growling. It wasn't a choke noise, just angry. Suddenly a loud bang numbed my eardrums. I heard a loud splat, and my attacker went limp, falling on top of me like a puppet, almost kissing me. I felt it expel a vile cloud of defiled air out of its mouth right into mine. For the first time I could remember, I wanted to vomit, and kicking the creature off of me, I rolled over and pasted the pavement with Case 4 MRE. My stomach emptied. I kinda laughed at the stuff as it congealed in the heat. It sure looked worse than I remembered it. I turned about to see Ruby shaking like a leaf, holding the gun that seemed to dwarf her. She held it like I did, across her chest, barrel pointing safely downward. She looked at me, then at the dead creature whose head was oozing what little it had left in the skull, and at the gun. I'm sorry. I waved her concern away and stood up, shaking even worse than her. No, you did good, kiddo. I took the gun back and draped the strap over the back of my neck. You used it like a pro. She nodded and smiled a bit. Yeah, my dad taught me. He also taught me how to use his service pistol. He said, "I never expect a girl to be looking back at them behind the gun." Smart man, your dad. I gave the creature a soft kick, just to see if it would try to move. It certainly didn't. I saw it had a uniform like mine, but without all the gear. Just a driver, I guess. Before I could pat her on the shoulder, I heard another growl and looked around in terror. In the minutes after the gunshot, a ring of the monsters had emerged from all directions, some of them from the undamaged houses. I saw one crawl from a ditch. 2 more crawled out of the back of a red pickup. We were ringed in. Ruby gulped, knowing that her shot had gotten a lot of unwanted attention. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I took a head count. There had to be 30 of them, all groaning and growling like sick dogs. Ruby put her back into mine, and I fumbled at the side of my pant leg. Undoing a strap, I pulled a pistol from its holster and jammed it into her wrist. "Here, more your size." Over the echoing chorus of growling and moaning came a clattering roar from a machine gun, and a huge armoured vehicle swung into sight, careering towards us. The creatures began to fall like wheat before a scythe, and those that endured the hail of bullets were splattered on the vehicle's front end. It came to a stop not 5 yards from us. The back end opened, and about 10 men in uniforms leapt out. 2 of them went to the still wriggling corpses and began dispatching them with headshots, but the other 8 circled us, training their weapons on me. They all wore ominous gas masks, wore thick green uniforms like mine, and were armed to the teeth. "On the ground!" one of them screamed through his mask. I looked down the barrels of the 8 assault rifles and felt laser pointers dancing across my chest. I put myself between them and the girl. "Don't hurt her," I said calmly, slowly laying my gun on the asphalt. I kneeled down, my head held high, my hands held, palm open. 2 men shouldered their firearms and dashed forwards to seize me. I lowered my head and prepared to be roughhoused by the men in masks. Then we all were stopped by a loud gasp from behind me. The soldiers froze in place, not alerted or scared, just paused in surprise. I turned, and the girl's face had paled with shock. She pointed to my face, the left side which wasn't obscured by bandages, and reached out to touch it. She looked into my eyes and began crying anew. And then she did something that caught me off guard. She threw her arms around me, weeping but happily this time. Over her sobbing and sniffling, I heard her squeak one word: "Daddy." I was floored and hugged her back. She saw me as her dad, and yet I did not know her. 2 soldiers gently pulled her off me and, holding me by the arms, escorted us into the back of their vehicle. It reminded me of the inside of a ribcage, with heavy cloth covering the frame. It was like a cage, yet it felt safe. It was nice and cold inside. My daughter sat across from me, between 2 huge soldiers with their gas masks, her eyes down as if horrified to look at me. I'm sure that if there were a vanity mirror in the back of these armor-plated trucks, I would have been too. I tried to smile, but it felt like someone stabbing thumbtacks into the bandages. All we could do was look at each other, before I was lulled to sleep by the gentle rocking of the transport. When I awoke, I wondered if I had again woken up in a different world. The truck had just stopped, and I opened my eyes as the soldiers filed out of the open back end of the vehicle. My daughter went first and then me, and I almost fell down. Overhead swept a deep blue sky, floored on the horizon by what at first looked like clouds, all towards what remained of Denver. All around me I could see everything bursting with life. Thousands of people filed about, a quarter of them in uniforms of all kinds, a lot of them like mine. I saw men and women in work suits, in casual clothes, some of them only in bedclothes and emergency blankets, and children of all ages. Many of them had backpacks. They must have been in school only days ago. And the herd wasn't just made up of humans. I saw dogs zipping about, birds in cages, a lot of cows and horses, a few cats perched lazily or hunted quietly, and I swear I even saw an ox. I looked beyond the crowd and saw a high wall made of huge metal cargo containers. Soldier and citizens alike wandered the top with guns, firing out beyond the wall occasionally, and beyond the wall stretched mountains and ridges, endless trees, and even some waterfalls. I grabbed the shirt sleeve of a man walking by. He was in a suit, like he had just come back from the office. "Hey, where the hell are we?" He put his hand on my shoulder softly and gave me a sorrowed look. "Glenwood. Everything farther east is gone, man. The eastern seaboard, the plains, everything east of the Rockies." I had no time to ask more questions before 2 military officers came and asked me to come with them to be decontaminated. After intensive showers and tests, details were provided to fill the blanks. Some disease had hit the country, coming from the east coast ports and spreading inland. By the time we recognized it, it had hit half the country. Those who got the disease died and became, apparently, the creatures that now stumbled about. Pretty sad if you ask me. The most intelligent creatures on the planet, down to the 2-legged equal of a bacteria. Funny statement that. They were carriers of the disease even after death. In all essence, a 2-legged bacteria, a bipedal virus, a mobile sickness. We had been lucky. It could have spread through the airlines, as it can only be spread by contact with infected blood. We had been able to fence it off at the mountains to save the rest of the country. What little was left to save. Apparently my men were deployed to Denver, where everyone was told to just stay indoors, that they'd be okay once the army arrived. But it was far worse than the higher-ups could have guessed. I had abandoned my unit to go find my family, instead of fleeing the incoming bombs. And that had put me in the immediate area of a bomb strike. Over the course of this story, I heard words like the Denver outbreak, containment failure, and decontamination. They meant nothing to me. Not that I didn't understand them. I just didn't care. I was still tired and drained from my battle for survival. I paid attention when I was told about my family, that they all died when a napalm strike hit our neighborhood, except my daughter Ruby, who hadn't been at home when the bombing commenced. Yet I didn't feel anger, not at first. How cruel is it that you don't cry for your lost loved ones because you forgot them? My injury caused me to not remember them. Not my wife, sons, sisters, brothers, not even my daughter. That thought was what provoked me to cry. I cried because I did not remember them. I looked outside the door, seeing Ruby sitting nervously in the hall, probably waiting for me. I did smile to myself a bit. At least I had her still. I still had a chance to know my family again, to know her again. Finally, I was told that once I recovered, me and my daughter would be moved to a safe zone in Grand Junction. But before we left, I chanced to ask the doctors what had happened to me. Again, I heard a lot of terms that were meaningless, but then I heard amnesia, damage to the cerebral cortex. It was a miracle that I had survived the wound, never mind the nuclear blast. You see, one of the soldiers who had picked us up came in with my old helmet. I almost didn't recognize it. It was bent in half, with a huge crater in the side deep enough to hide a cake. It had been impaled on a steel beam hurled by the explosion, and had not the chin strap broken, it would have taken my head clean off. I remember running my hand along the helmet, watching my hand disappear into the massive dent. I looked from the helmet to my daughter, sitting in a chair just outside the examination room, and chuckled to myself. A miracle, indeed. Fear is an Open Door by MercuryCoatedVeins. October 12th, 2014. Somerville Psychiatric Hospital for Extended Stay Patients. Interview of Elizabeth Hope Porter, age 17. Admitted on September 27th, 2013, by force via parental signature and doctor recommendation. Currently undergoing treatment for acute delusional disorder and schizophrenia. Dictated by Porter, recorded and transcribed for records and training purposes. Hello? Can you hear me? The doctor told me to talk into this little tape recorder. Sorry if it's a little hard to hear me. I can't move very far in my jacket. My feet and chair are strapped to the floor. I'm kind of stretching to reach the microphone. Well, the doctors behind the window are giving me the thumbs up, so I guess that means everything's fine. High quality mic. I should probably start now, right? Yep, they're nodding. The doctor told me to talk about what we discussed when I first came here. I've been ranting on about how I wasn't afraid anymore, that the thing I feared was finally gone. He asked me what I was afraid of, or what I had been afraid of. That's a loaded question, isn't it? I mean, humans fear a lot of things, don't we? We're scared of bugs, the ocean, a paper cut, normal things, silly things. Things we see on a daily basis and yet tremble at the sight of for one reason or another. I can't really relate to that. I mean, bugs are kind of ugly, but there's nothing to be afraid of in something you can remove from existence by just smashing it with your dad's size 12 shoe. And the ocean is indeed full of dangers like sharks and drowning, but why fear it when the answer is perfectly simple? Learn to swim or don't get in the water. As for paper cuts, they only hurt for a second and then they are forgotten. No more lethal than stubbing your toe or bumping your elbow. What's so scary about seeing the fluid that makes you alive bubbling up on the outside? It astounds me, really, the things people are scared of. I understand being cautious of things that kill you, but stuff like this? Jeez, get your priorities straight, humanity. That said, there is one fear that I can understand. One that, I suppose, you can call rational, even if it isn't me. You know how, in movies, the character is walking down a dark hall or some abandoned building at night, and suddenly a door to their right starts to rattle, or they hear breathing or scratching or downright screams coming from behind it. You know how they move towards it so damn slowly, dreading every step closer, wanting to open it, but so incredibly scared to do so. I've always hated that. I watch a scene like that and think, that's not scary. What the hell is she so scared of a closed door? Most people, I'm sure, would say something like, because there's something terrible on the other side. Because when she opens it, she might see something awful, or get a face full of straight-up monster murderer death. To that I say, I don't disagree. Anything could be hiding behind a closed door. Anything at all. A vile monster, a portal to another world, your parents having 5 minutes worth of quick while the kids are outside sex. There's no telling what's behind a piece of 2-inch thick hardwood in the average house, haunted or otherwise. But that's the kicker. It's behind a door, a closed door. There's a barrier between you and the potential danger. If there is something on the other side, something sinister and unsightly, it can't get to you unless the door is opened. That's why scenes like the ones in bad horror movies always piss me off. If you don't like the look of that suspicious door in front of you, or don't appreciate the unhealthy sounds coming from behind it, why don't you just turn around and walk away from the goddamn door? You don't have to open it and face a fate worse than death. You can just leave it be, ignore it, maybe even lock it for good measure. Doors have locks for a reason. Better still, how about you just barricade it further? Put up some planks of wood, drag a dresser in front of it. Even your own 2 hands would work if you're strong enough. See, to me, a closed door is the most comforting sight in the world. Now, an opened door, that's another story. The doctors just gave each other this look. I could tell this is what they've wanted me to talk about this whole time. Sorry, I tend to get ranty about stuff like this. My brain just sets paths it likes to go on, and I kind of have to follow them. Not my fault. Okay, where was I? Oh, right, open doors. I used to hate open doors. Hate them with a capital H-A-T-E. There's just something so unsettling about them. A passageway left ajar by a careless hand, allowing access to anything and everything that lay on the other side. It's even worse than the lights are off in the room, and I can't see what's inside. Oh, but it can see me, though. Even if I'm all the way down the hall, or even around the corner, I know it's there. Waiting. Wanting to cross the threshold, but unable to. Completely aware of my presence on the other side. At least when a door's closed, it can't see me. It's trapped behind a barrier it can't physically move on its own. Silenced and banished to whatever realm it lives in when it's not trying to break into my world. Behind the door it can't whisper to me, can't tempt me to close its only entrance, can't snatch me up and drag me through it into some dark and horrid place. It could only get me if someone leaves a door open, like an invitation, you might say. I bet I know what you're thinking. What am I talking about? What's it? Well, I don't really know. I've never been 100% on what exactly let's call it the thing in the doorway, is. I just know that open doors have always frightened me, since I was in diapers. A doorway wasn't safe unless I was the one who opened the door. Only I could do it fast enough to trick the thing inside from seizing the opportunity to catch me between rooms. My record is less than 2 seconds to open, get in, and close. Though I think 5 is probably the longest I have to get the door closed again. I learned over the years exactly how to trick it. No one else ever seemed to care about this problem. Doors were always left open wherever I went. At school, at the mall, at home, everywhere. Gaping maws filled with something that apparently only I could see. I got mad at people who didn't close doors behind them. Mad enough to throw tantrums and cause some pretty bad scenes out in public. I cried when my parents tucked me in and forgot to close my bedroom door at night, unable to sleep until they did. I even refused to go to the bathroom in my own house if someone left the door open after using it. I admit, it wasn't easy living like this. I lost friends faster than I made them. I missed a lot of days at school, and passed up many opportunities because something, or lack thereof, stood in my way. I went to a lot of therapists as a child, but they always asked me why I did this, why I couldn't be around open doors. To this day, I still can't give them a better answer than, because I just couldn't. I knew from the bottom of my heart that something lay in wait inside every doorway I saw. Something evil and hungry and waiting for me to finally slip up and fall into its clutches. Here at the hospital, they made me take little orange pills to calm me down. But before I came here, I never accepted medication, despite advice from therapists. I'm okay with it now, but back then I was sure that taking anything at all would give the thing in the doorway an advantage over me. Can't trick a monster when you're addle-brained, you know? So instead, my family had to reconstruct their lives to fit around what they called my condition. Doors were always closed at home, and every knob had a lock on the inside and out, even the closets. I even had a nanny for a while who came to school with me to make sure I wasn't bothered by carelessly opened lockers or lunchroom doors. Everything went smoothly for a good 16 years. It wasn't perfect. I had many panic attacks and public outbursts. I suffered some pretty bad bouts of depressions. And there was never a moment when I felt truly safe. where I wasn't thinking of that thing every time a hinge creaked or a lock clicked. But I learned to live with it. I had my routines, my rituals, my coping mechanisms. I had my family's cooperation and unconditional support, and I had a key for every door in my house. 16 tense but stable years. Then the bad night came. That got their attention. All the doctors are looking at me now. A wall of bright, glittering eyes. I think they're all interns or something. People who haven't heard this story yet. The reason everyone thinks I belong here. The only one who's not oogling me is my personal doctor. He's the only one who knows the whole thing already. Well, I guess I should get around to telling it, right? Maybe they'll understand better than the doctor did. Maybe they'll actually be on my side. Oh, I just realized. I haven't mentioned Tyler yet, have I? Well, Tyler's my little brother. How do I put this? He got a kick out of my condition. He just loved to tease me about it. He purposefully left doors open around the house, jiggled the locks late at night, and made me chase him to doorways where I would freeze and glare at him while he made stupid faces and dared me to cross the threshold. God, I despised him for it. He never understood how much panic and terror he caused me every time a door flew open, followed by his dorky little laugh. It was a miracle I didn't have grey hair by the time I was a teenager. He was getting better though. When I was 13, I'd smashed his face into a door frame as he was trying to pull me through it into another room. The doctor said I'd broken his nose and part of his left eye socket. After that, he didn't tease me as much. I guess pain was the only way to get it through to little brats like him that tormenting me was a no-no. That said, I couldn't do it all the time. My parents freaked after the first incident, and any time I was tempted to do it again, they threatened me with trips to the psych ward. That calmed me a little. After all, psych ward meant pills, and pills meant addle-brained, and addle-brained meant the thing in the doorway would have no trouble getting its wicked claws on me. So, last year, on a warm night in September, my parents were going out to a party and asked me to babysit Tyler. This wasn't unusual. I was doing much better in terms of handling my condition, so they trusted me with watching my brother for short periods of time. They left around 5 and promised to be home after 1 in the morning. I made some mac and cheese for dinner, and at the table, I warned Tyler not to cause trouble for the rest of the night. I even promised to let him stay up until after midnight if he behaved. He obliged with a mouthful of gooey cheese, but I saw that little gleam in his eye, that impish gleam of mischief yet to come. Once a brat, always a brat. But the night wore on, and everything seemed okay. We kept our distance from each other, I watching TV in the living room on one side of the house, Tyler playing in his room, the door shut, on the other. By 11 o'clock, I was contentedly munching on popcorn and getting lost in a marathon of NCIS, my mind furthest from doorways it had ever been. I even forgot that Tyler was in the house until, during a commercial, I heard his bedroom door open. Immediately, I hit mute on the remote and listened. See, I knew the sound of every door in that house. Each creak and squeak was unique in my ears. I counted how many times the hinges peeled open and groaned closed on my brother's particularly squeaky bedroom door. Open, close, followed by footsteps, then open, close again. That was the bathroom door. I could tell by the wooden "erk" sound it made when he shut it. Now I just had to wait for him to finish his business and go back to his room. I wouldn't be able to sit still until I knew all the door sounds were cycled through. Tyler knew this. He also knew he wouldn't hear the end of it if I heard an off number of door clicks. I watched the muted screen and listened carefully. Toilet flush. Bathroom door. Smooth open. Close. Footsteps down the hall. Bedroom door. Squeak open and... I listened, but there was no second squeak that signified he closed the door. The house remained perfectly, painfully silent. My heart was already starting to pound in my chest. Gong, gong, gong. Liquid in my ears. I pressed back into the couch and waited a moment longer. He's just messing with me, I thought. He's just making me paranoid. Hell, he's probably about to burst out laughing any second now and slam the door shut. I waited. But there was still nothing. Just silence. Now the panic set in. The door was open. The door was open in the house. Even though I was on the other side of the house, I could practically feel it like a scab on the bottom of my foot. The thing was there now. It was in that open space between my brother's room and the hallway, gathering itself up, becoming solid, searching for me, waiting for me. I didn't want to move, but I couldn't sit still. My body was sweaty and trembling, my legs tapping restlessly, my fingers digging into the sofa cushions. I was shaking so hard that I could have bitten my tongue in two. "Tyler, close the damn door!" I screamed, my voice high and terrified. It echoed back at me and made me flinch. Again I expected laughter, wanted the laughter, but the house was so quiet that not even the supports creaked. God, why was he being so quiet? I thought of something. What if the thing had Tyler? I didn't think it was possible. They'd never bothered my parents or my little brother before, hence how they could walk past an open door with no problem. It only ever wanted me. But what if it changed its mind? What if it'd gone tired of waiting for me to come to it and decided to go for easier prey? Or maybe it was holding Tyler captive, using him as bait to lure me out. I could just imagine him trapped in the dark, rot in place inside the doorway, held in a pair of large, monstrous claws. Perhaps he was so quiet because he could not cry out for me to save him. Perhaps he knew the thing would use his cries to draw me into it and catch me as well. I clasped the sides of my head, rocking back and forth on the couch, starting to whine. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't just let it take Tyler. Even if I hated him, my parents would get so mad at me for letting him die. They'd yell at me and make me take medication and let the thing get me when I couldn't control myself. I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't. But what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Then, in the silence, I heard a small, cheeky snicker. I froze, my hands leaving my head and curling into fists. It was laughing at me now. Laughing at all the pain it caused me, all the torment it brought. How dare it? How dare it? I couldn't stand for it. 16 years I'd submitted. 16 goddamn years I let it dictate how I lived my life. Oh, I was sick of living in fear all the time. I was sick of shaking at the sight of doors. Sick of peeing my pants when a bathroom was right in front of me. Sick of crying myself to sleep at night because I couldn't stop dreaming about the thing in the doorway. No more. I'd show it once and for all. I took the deepest breath I could, stood up from the couch, and started walking towards the bedroom hallway. As I passed through the kitchen, I pulled a large boning knife from the block on the counter. It felt much better than going in alone. There were 4 doors in the hallway. My parents' room, the bathroom, my room, and my brother's room. His was the only open door. Even from the end of the hall, I could see the darkness in the doorway. It wasn't just that the lights in the room were off. The darkness was thick, coalesced, moving like a black curtain, hiding something sinister in its folds. It was in there, waiting for me. You could hear my heartbeat. I knew it could. It was so damn loud and fast, like a machine gun. I bet it wanted to rip it out in front of my face and swallow it whole. I wanted to run back to the living room and crawl under the couch until my parents got home. But I knew I couldn't. That thing would kill Tyler if I ignored it. Then I'd have to go to the psych ward. Then it would kill me. So I squeezed the knife and walked slowly towards the doorway, telling myself that I was not afraid. "Tyler?" I said, my voice bouncing all over the walls. No response, but I did hear that laughter again, that tiny, impish snicker. You know what? It sounded an awful lot like my brother's laugh. That monster. How dare it imitate my brother? It was trying to trick me. Trying to make me think that this was just a little game he was playing. Trying to get me to let my guard down. But I knew better. I wasn't about to fall for its games. I was done playing. I was going to make it pay. I stepped towards the doorway, standing a good 5 feet away at first. I saw nothing inside, not even the outlines of my brother's bed or dresser, just a rectangle of solid black. I held the knife flat against my thigh, inching my way closer and closer. The snickering was a little louder now, trying to be quiet, still imitating my brother. I was so angry that my teeth ground together. Then I saw a flicker of movement in the darkness. I gasped, and the snickers stopped. It was waiting, ready to strike. So was I. Taking one long step, I placed myself directly in front of the doorway. I'd never been this close to it before. Close enough to almost touch the impenetrable blackness within. I finally saw it. The thing, the nightmare that had haunted me all my life. It revealed itself to me at last. It pushed through the darkness with arms outstretched, fingers clawed and reaching, eyes gleaming a dull red and mouth grinning a crooked gap-toothed way. It even made a sound, still imitating Tyler with a high mocking "Boo!" I'm sure it thought it finally had me, that it was going to grab me and drag me down into whatever hell it had crawled up from. But I was ready for it. Without even the slightest bit of hesitation, I drove the knife into the darkness. Oh God, the relief. You don't understand how wonderful it felt to plunge the knife into its throat. Blood burst over my hand like a warm bubble, but I didn't even care. I listened to the thing gurgle, felt its hands reaching up and grabbing at the knife, and my own hand locked tight around the handle. But I didn't stop there. I yanked the knife back and forth, soaring into the skin and sending more blood splattering across the floor and the front of my shirt. It wasn't long before the thing stopped to its knees. I followed it down, pushing it to the floor, ripping the knife from its throat. It flapped its lips like it was trying to speak, but only gurgled whistles of air leaked out of its mutilated windpipe. I was so happy to see it bleed, to know I was finally hurting it instead of it hurting me. Exhilarated, I lifted the knife and jabbed it into its mouth, bringing it down and down again and again and again until its face resembled nothing more than a shapeless red mass on the carpet. When it had stopped moving, I left the knife lodged in what was once its right eye,
and sat back against the wall, panting harder than I ever had in my life. Everything was hazy and tinted red. I rubbed my eyes until I could see clearly again. And you know what I saw? The doorway. I was sitting in his bedroom, and I could see the hallway beyond the doorway. No darkness, no sense of menace. Nothing. Hardly able to believe it, I reached out with my blood-stained hand and was elated to see it pass through without trouble. Nothing grabbed it. Nothing pulled me in. There was nothing in the doorway. I let out the biggest sigh of relief. I did it. I killed it. I killed the thing that had haunted me for years. I could go through open doors now and not worry about what was on the other side. I was finally free. But wait, I bet you're asking, what about Tyler? Well, I couldn't find him after I killed the thing in the doorway. I checked under his bed, inside his toy box, even inside his closet, but he was nowhere to be found. I called out to him, thinking he'd somehow left the room while I was fighting the monster. No luck there either. I realized a little later that he must still be trapped in the space inside the doorframe. The dark world the thing had come from. Without someone to open the door between its world and mine, the portal was sealed shut, meaning Tyler was still in there, locked away from his home and his family forever. If the monster didn't eat him before I got to it, that is. It frustrated me when no one believed this story. When my parents got home later that night, I eagerly began to tell them how I'd conquered my fears at last, but they wouldn't stop screaming about all the blood in the house. My mother even cradled the corpse of that thing in her arms and begged me to tell her why I'd killed my baby brother. In hindsight, I understand the confusion. Even in death, the thing was still masquerading as Tyler. From his clothes to his hair, right down to the little V-shaped freckle on the back of his left hand. They were convinced that it was really Tyler. So were the police and the doctors as well. But I knew they were wrong. That bloody mess was a monster. My own personal demon. My mountain finally climbed and conquered. I did not kill my little brother. Still, my parents were furious that I had lost Tyler. They treated me like I had a disease all my life, and had not known about it until now. At the behest of the doctors, they had put me here, in the dreaded psych ward, where I'm monitored, fed little orange pills in a cup, and kept in a soft room so I don't hurt myself or anyone else. I will say, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I kind of like it here, all bright and clean and with so many closed doors. It's so comforting to see them locked tight with key cards and surrounded by big bodyguards. Not that I'm worried about stuff like that anymore. Open doors don't scare me now. There's nothing in them. Nothing except Tyler, of course, but he only seems to be there. A hazy, not quite there outline in the back of my eyes. Sometimes if I forget to take my pills, he stands by my bed at night, leaning over me, his face all red and pulpy and dripping onto my pajamas. I don't know if he's dead or not, but even if he is, it's not like his ghost could come back here. He can't really come back though, not from where he is. Good riddance if you ask me. He was so annoying and mean. I think my parents are better off without him. I know I am. If the thing hadn't taken him away, I'd still be trapped in my own hellish hallway of gaping doorways. I should be thanking him for helping me remove my greatest fear. Guess he was good for something after all. Oh, the doctors don't seem to agree with me. They're all giving me this look, like I've just done something terrible to their pets. That's too bad. I really hoped someone would hear me out. Maybe I shouldn't blame them. After all, it's hard for others to see a monster that only scares you. It's harder still when they're tricked into thinking you are the monster instead.